You ever get the feeling that our economic systems are just working against us? That they feel way too big, too brittle, and totally disconnected from our actual lives? Well, today we're going to dive into a pretty radical idea that looks to the natural world for a much better design, a way to build an economy that's as resilient and adaptive as a living ecosystem.
Okay, so let's start with how things work right now. Our economy is basically built like a pyramid. It thinks in a straight line, from the local level up to the national and then to the global. But the problem with this rigid, top-down setup is that it's a one-way street. Decisions made way up at the top often feel completely out of touch with what's happening on the ground. So the big question is there a better way?
So let's give this problem a name. We're dealing with what you could call a brittle pyramid, an economy where the very structure makes it disconnected and, well, fragile.
And this pyramid model, it leads to some pretty major failures. First up, you get these brittle supply chains that just snap the second there's a disruption. Then you've got that huge disconnect between scales, where global decisions just don't match local needs. Third is ecological overshoot. We're burning through resources way faster than the planet can recover. And finally, it makes our communities totally dependent on these massive, centralized systems that are often too slow and clumsy to actually help.
But what if the blueprint for a better way has been right in front of us this whole time? This is where we can turn to nature for inspiration. And it starts by asking a really interesting question. What if our economy could function less like a clunky machine and a lot more like a living, breathing system?
No, really, let's just sit with that for a second. Instead of trying to force these rigid, man-made structures onto everything, what if we tried to copy the patterns that have allowed life to thrive on this planet for billions of years? Just asking that simple question opens up a completely different way of thinking.
And the answer begins with this incredible concept, the fractal. A fractal is just a pattern that repeats itself at different sizes. Think about the branches of a tree. A tiny little twig has the same basic branching pattern as a massive limb. You see it everywhere in nature, in river deltas, in lightning, even in the structure of our own lungs. It's nature's secret to building things that are both efficient and incredibly resilient. Okay, so that's piece number one. The second piece of the puzzle is a word you've probably heard before, sovereignty. But we're not just talking about nations here. This is about communities having the real power and control to shape their own futures and manage their own resources. All right, now let's put those two ideas together. What do you get? You get fractal sovereignty. It's a model where every level of the economy, from a single household all the way up to a global network, is both independent and deeply connected. The best way to picture it is a living tree, where every part is distinct but absolutely essential for the whole thing to live.
So, how does this tree-like economy actually work? It's all about three interlocking scales, which we can think of as the roots, the trunk, and the canopy of this new regenerative economy. So let's break this down. It all starts from the ground up with the hyper-local scale. These are the roots, the strong, resilient foundation. Then you have the bioregional scale. That's the trunk, which organizes how everything flows. And it's all connected through the Cosmo-Local scale, the canopy that reaches out and interacts with the bigger world.
So down at the foundation, the hyper-local level, what does that actually look like? Well, it's everything happening in your immediate community. We're talking local food, repair cafes, sharing resources with your neighbors. The key word here is autonomy. The community has real control over its own stuff. But, and this is key, it's not isolated. It can tap into a whole world of global knowledge to do things better. Okay, moving up from the roots, we get to the trunk of our tree, the bioregional scale. Now, instead of organizing things by political lines on a map, this level follows natural boundaries, like an entire watershed or a river valley. It's the part that connects different local communities, giving them the collective strength to handle bigger challenges, like a drought or a major supply chain breakdown. And finally, we get to the canopy, the Cosmo-Local scale. Now, this is really important. This is not some kind of global headquarters calling all the shots. Not at all. It's more like a global library or a knowledge-sharing network. Here's a great way to think about it. What's light, like a design file or an idea, can travel the globe instantly. But what's heavy, like the actual wood, metal, and labor, stays local. That way, global wisdom always gets adapted to fit local needs.
Okay, so we have the roots, the trunk, the canopy. But the real magic is in how they all talk to each other. How does it all stay connected? The answer is pretty cool. It's found in the science of living networks.
This quote just nails the difference perfectly. Our old system is a linear pipeline. Resources and information flow in one direction, and value usually gets extracted along the way.
But this model works like an Ouroboros. You know that ancient symbol of the snake eating its own tail? It's a regenerative loop, where global knowledge flows down to make local communities stronger, and then local innovations flow right back up to enrich the global community.
And this amazing loop is powered by information that's constantly flowing in every direction. You've got bottom-up contributions as local experiments feed new ideas into the system. You get top-down knowledge, not as commands, but as helpful patterns and support. You've got communities sharing directly with each other, side to side. And most importantly, you have constant feedback loops that allow the entire system to learn, adapt, and get smarter over time.
And this is so crucial. This isn't just some nice, hopeful vision. The whole framework is actually grounded in serious science, in fields like complexity science and network theory. It's built on principles like self-organization, the same incredible force that lets a flock of birds move as one, or an ant colony build massive structures, all without a single boss giving orders.
So when you put it all together, what's the big promise here? It's really about a fundamental shift in our thinking, about moving from designing our economy like a brittle machine to nurturing it so it can grow like a thriving ecosystem. So let's go right back to where we started. That brittle pyramid? It's disconnected, fragile, and ultimately extractive. But the living tree, built on these fractal ideas, is the total opposite. It's resilient because it has all these overlapping connections. It's adaptive because it's constantly learning from feedback. And it's regenerative because it creates more for everyone through collaboration, not by just taking things.
So what are the big takeaways? First, we can actually model our economy on nature's own successful time-tested patterns. Second, it works by integrating those three key scales: the hyperlocal, the bioregional, and the cosmo-local. This creates systems that are deeply rooted in place but still connected to the wider world. And finally, it uses the power of living networks to build an economy that can actually adapt and thrive in the face of change.
And all of this leaves us with one last powerful thought. For centuries, we've tried to engineer our economy like a machine, demanding perfect predictability and control. But that machine is clearly breaking down. So what if our role isn't to be engineers at all? What if it's to be more like gardeners? What if instead of trying to build a better machine, we could just help our economy grow, like a forest?